The bread will puff up like magic, and all you need are 3 ingredients. If you watch until the end, I'll teach you a delicious curry to go with it. Let's get started. Bring some water to boil in a heavy-based pan. Add some salt. Once the water is boiling, tip in some rice flour. This is very finely ground rice flour as opposed to ground rice, and there is a difference. Ground rice has a coarse texture, whereas rice flour is finely milled just like any type of wheat flour you'll find. Once the flour is in, mix it up using the end of a rolling pin or a wooden spoon. It'll look quite dry at this point, but don't worry, everything will come together as a dough soon. Just keep stirring until the mixture comes together as a rough, shaggy looking crumble topping. Switch the heat off and then cover the pan with a tight-fitting lid and leave this to stand for about 10 minutes. Don't leave it any longer. The mixture needs to be very hot in order to bring it together as a dough. Tip the mixture out into a large kneading plate or onto a clean work surface. This is optional, but I like to add a small amount of oil at this point, which keeps the roti nice and soft. Since the mixture is still too hot to handle, I'm using the bottom of a bowl to knead it until it's cool enough to handle. Again, it's really important to do this while the mixture is still super hot. Once it's cooled down, you can go in with your hands and knead this for around 8 to 10 minutes. This is a fantastic take on gluten-free roti. Roti is an everyday Indian flatbread, loved because it's so quick and easy to make. There's no leavening involved, and a stack of roti goes with practically everything. It's the little black dress of Indian dinner times. I've always had a bit of a penchant for Play-Doh. Twiddling bits of colourful, yielding putty to make all manners of make-believe objects, people and animals was so soothing. From a young age, making roti quickly became the activity that replaced my Play-Doh adventures. It felt useful and exciting to channel my energy into something more real, into something that I could eat. I'd watch each roti rise like a balloon on the hot tawa, my breath moving in tandem with the rise and fall of the magnificent flatbread. Now we've portioned out some of our dough, we can move on to rolling them out. But before you do that, cover the rest with a cling film to prevent drying. Before rolling, it's really important to give each and every piece of dough another thorough knead. This activates the starch in the rice flour, bringing it all together so that it doesn't fall apart. Remember that there's no gluten in this dough, so that starch is the key to making sure that the roti don't tear and crack. Dust the dough in some additional rice flour and begin rolling it into a circle as best you can. And remember, this really doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to use a trick. You'll notice that the edges are a little bit rough and cracked. We're going to trim them off using the lid of a pan. Just like that. And there we go, the perfect round roti. No professional rolling skills required. The dough should be quite thin, just like this, but if you feel it's still a little bit thick, then just go over it a few more times with the rolling pin. Dust off any excess flour and then slap it down onto a preheated tawa or frying pan. Allow it to cook for about 10 seconds before turning. Cook this side for 15 to 20 seconds. Then remove from the heat and place the roti directly over an open flame. You can use a grate if you wish. And now we can see the magic happen. Use a pair of heat-proof tongs to turn the roti and make sure it's toasted to your liking. Don't forget the butter. Now all you need to do is repeat this process for the remaining dough. I find this kneading motion to be the most effective. While wheat flour is used to make most styles of roti, rice flour is a great alternative that yields fantastic results. Most of India's ancient flatbreads were traditionally made with grains like millet, sorghum, lentils, and rice. Rotla, bhakri, dosa and chila are some examples of flatbreads and pancakes served at mealtimes. This gluten-free alternative to wheat flour roti is perfect for anyone with celiac disease or a gluten intolerance, and the rotis taste perfect with all types of curry and dal. This tip is actually great for anybody who finds it difficult to roll rotis in the first place. Even if it's a wheat flour type, this trick works with all types. Just press and cut as if you were cutting a cookie, and then simply trim off the sides. You don't have to trim the ends of the roti if you don't want to, but I find that they rise much better if you do. These are so quick and easy to cook. And if you don't have a gas fire, you can also make this over an electric cooker lined with a grate just like this. You can also use this rice roti in place of tortillas in dishes like fajitas, breakfast wraps, and quesadillas. I hope you found this useful. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, it would be a big help for me if you did. If you know anyone with celiac disease or a gluten intolerance, please share this video with them in the hope that everybody can enjoy hot, fresh bread. Stick around if you want to learn a delicious side dish that goes perfectly with this rice roti. Indian cabbage and potato curry cooked my way, with ice. It's as basic as it is beautiful. Let's start by shredding our cabbage. I'm using a mandolin, but you can use a knife and use any white or green cabbage you like. Next, peel some potatoes, any floury variety will do, and chop them into 1 centimeter cubes. This is a wonderful home-style Indian curry recipe which pairs perfectly with wholemeal roti. You can have it on the table in under 30 minutes. Since it takes no time at all to prepare, you can chop these potatoes and leave them aside until needed. However, if you're preparing the potatoes in advance, then I recommend you soak them in some cold water to prevent them from turning brown. Now that our potatoes are ready, it's time to temper some spices in hot oil, which is going to allow these spices to slowly release their aromas. In we go with some mustard seeds and cumin seeds. They will crackle, asafoetida or hing, some minced ginger. I'm using fresh but frozen's fine too. These are canned tomatoes. You can also use fresh if you prefer, and they don't have to be super smooth. Ground turmeric for a lovely colour. Chili powder, as much or as little as you like. Salt. And a small amount of sugar just to balance the acidity of the tomatoes. Now give everything a good stir and allow it to come to a gentle simmer. We're going to cook this uncovered until the oil begins to separate from the tomatoes. Just like this. Once we get to this point, we can add in our prepared potatoes and cabbage. Stir to coat all of the veggies in that delicious tomato masala. Since this is a dry style stir-fried curry, we're going to cook it with an ice lid. The technique is based on an age-old cooking method where the cook would fit a pot with a lipped lid or plate and fill it with cold water. Science. The juices from the vegetables rise up, condense and fall back down, cooking everything perfectly. This forgoes the need to add any water to the food and therefore preserves all the natural flavours of the ingredients. The traditional method calls for the plate to be filled with cold water, but we're going a step further to build more steam by using ice. Cook this over a low heat, stirring at the 5-minute mark. The ice will melt and you will be rewarded with the most meltingly tender cabbage and potatoes, all cooked in their own vegetable juices. If you don't want to try this method, you can of course cook this curry with the traditional lid. However, I find that this technique really does help when the veggies require a little bit of cooking, but you still want to give the dish a dry stir-fry-like finish. The low and slow heat underneath encourages the cabbage to release all of its moisture, cooking the potatoes at the same time. The final step is to give this a final stir-fry over a high heat, stirring all the time. Some of the cabbage and potatoes might brown a little, that's just going to add lots of extra flavour. This final step will allow any excess moisture to quickly evaporate off and you will be left with the most delicious home-style Indian curry to scoop up with buttery chapati. I like mine spicy, so I finish off with some chopped green chilies and a burst of fresh coriander. Final stir and it's time to plate up. I'd love to know what some of your favourite home-style Indian dishes are, and maybe I can recreate them. Leave me a comment below, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, then please do. I love having you here.